right. Thank you all so much. Beautiful worship set, Corey. Appreciate you guys a lot. This morning we continue living in the kingdom. We've been living in the kingdom of ice for the last couple of weeks. I'm ready to get out of it. I know you guys are ready to be out of it. It's one of those things that we haven't had for a while, this long extended period of cold. But it's happened before, and it'll happen again. But it's nice to be on the spring side of it, hopefully, as we start moving closer to Easter. And that's what this has been about, is just listening to some of the stories and listening to some of the teachings of Christ through the parables of Luke. Luke recorded these parables, and there's some of these parables are exclusive only to Luke. I can only imagine what those conversations had to be like, talking to individuals who had heard these parables taught and was asking, and they were that Luke was giving them, and he was writing them down as he goes through this historical perspective of his gospel and his story of Jesus. Last week, Jesus challenged us with a question that still lingers this week. As we looked at the exchange between the lawyer and Christ and the question, who is my neighbor? Have you thought about that this week? This is one of those seasons that God gives us. You know, He plans things and allows things, and things happen in our lives. And so it's kind of like last year when the flood happened, and I was living on my own little private island, and so there's only a few of us that live there. Most of them are Ticheners, and so we have our own little island down there. And so I saw my neighbors more during that period of time during the flood than I have since, right? Because we're surrounded by water, and everybody's out checking water depth and seeing what's going to be underwater tomorrow. And so you go down to the bridge, and there's Landon, and it's like, hey, man, good morning. You know, like 3 mornings in a row, I meet Landon Spurlock down on the bridge, and we're checking to see how high the water's coming up, and you see them every day. And so God gives us moments and things like this so that we spend more time checking on each other. I think we've lost that in our culture a lot, is checking on each other and checking in with people just to see how they're doing. And so the question, who is my neighbor? We learned last week that living in the kingdom living, means moving toward people in need. We also learned that when we move toward people who are in need, it costs us something, right? When life is at full speed, when life is at full speed, why do we not see our neighbors as often? It's time. Time is money. Time is everything. And so all of our time is booked, right? It's like, this is what we have. This is the schedule, and you got to sleep. Even though I've tried to live without it a lot in my life, it doesn't work. You eventually get caught, okay? It'll get you. You can't not sleep. And so you put all those hours into the day, and it's like, where did it go? And so there's a cost to it. And if it's someone that God has really called us to work with, to reach, to share with, to go in all, right? To go all in and disciple somebody, there's a cost to that, right? There's a cost to that. It's not easy, and it's not free. Today, Jesus turns the lens a little bit. He tunes it just a little. Last week, we asked the question, who am I called to love, right? Who am I called to love? Who in my life, who is that person out there that I'm called to love? And today, Jesus asks us this question. Who does God relentlessly pursue? Think about that for a moment. Who does God relentlessly pursue? Who does He go after? Because kingdom living is not just about who we stop for, but it's about who God refuses to give up on. Who God refuses to give up on, that He's going to stop at nothing. So Luke tells us something important before Jesus ever tells the story. And so we're going to be looking, if you haven't figured it out yet, we're going to be looking at the parable of the lost sheep, right? And this should be familiar to a lot of you. And it comes in Luke chapter 15. And verses 1 and 2 set the scene, set the stage for this. And so this is the context in which this parable is shared. And it's very important to understand that. Verse 1 says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. Here it is again, right? The tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus, to hear what He has to say. But what did the religious leaders do with that? How did they respond to all of these tax collectors? And you know, if you've been in church and you've heard me very much, you know that the idea of tax collectors and sinners, the tax collector was its own little category of bad people, right? It's like you got sinners, we all sinners, but tax collectors are a little worse, right? And so that's why they would always write that in there that way. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them? What gives?" This parable is not in a vacuum, okay? Jesus is responding to this criticism, right? He hears it, he knows what's going on. He also knows what's in their heart. They don't even have to say it out loud. These people are offended, not by the teaching, okay? Not by the teaching, but by the people that he keeps company with, okay? You ever heard of shunning, right? Right? It's like you, as a teacher, as a religious leader, should not have company with these people. You shouldn't even be in their presence. They're bad people. And so you should not be there. And you think, really? But that's their reaction, right? I mean, it's like, why? We don't understand why you're teaching these people. These people are bad people. They aren't asking out loud. But this is what their hearts are saying. Think about this a minute. Why is God wasting time on people like that? Think about that for a minute. Why is God wasting time on people like that? Guys, let me just be real with you, okay? Sometimes it's frustrating, right? I work with high school students, right? And I know what some of you all work with on a daily basis, and I know what some of you, and there's times in that job, there's times in those days, there's times in those weeks that we look sometimes, and in your mind, in your human mind, you say, this is a hopeless situation, right? This is a hopeless situation. I don't know how this is going to get solved, but I'm coming to the end of my rope of how to solve it, right? I don't get it. And so that's just reality, right? Sometimes when you're helping or trying to help somebody, trying to do the best thing that you can for somebody, and they're resisting that help with every ounce in them, and you're looking at them and going, come on, man. Come on, girl. Come on, I'm trying to help you. And you're not doing anything to let me help you better, right? And it's like, this is what I've always reminded myself in those moments. Sometimes it's just not me. Sometimes God's going to use somebody else. And this is my greatest blessing. In those moments when I've come to the end of what I can do, I turn them over to the Lord and say, I know you're not giving up on them. I'm out. I don't have anything else. If you give me something else, I'll certainly employ it. But I know you're not giving up on them. And so we're gonna hand them over to you, right? But some of us are called to go deep, right? Some of us are called to help. Because listen, mamas tend not to give up, right? Mamas tends not to come to the end of their rope. Mamas have an ability when it's their own flesh and blood, when it's the one they gave birth to, they don't give up. They hang on. They hang on and they hang on and they hang on and they don't give up. That's the way God is. You know why? He has kids. They're His kids. And He doesn't give up. Ever. So Jesus tells them this story. In verse 3, he tells them this parable. So suppose one of you has 100 sheep, loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Here's today's message in a nutshell, okay? A quick overview. Kingdom life that we're talking, living in the kingdom, reflects the heart of God. And God's heart will relentlessly pursue the lost, and He will rejoice even when one is found. All right? The first thing is this. This story begins with a loss. Okay? The story begins with a loss. And he says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one. Okay? This isn't negligence. It's not carelessness, right? Loss happens, even under watchful care. Okay? The last 2 weeks, I've spent more time with my cows than any other time this year. Why? It's cold, right? The nutrition requirements of cattle go up when the temperature goes down. Okay, so when it gets ice and the ground gets covered in ice and then the temperature starts going down, then I step in, right? I step in because their nutrient requirement needs go up. And so what I've been giving them to eat for the last 2 or 3 months has been fine until then, but not now. They need more, right? So they got fed twice a day. When it was at zero, when we were below, when we were in that realm, I was out there every morning, every evening, putting the right amount of nutrition in their trough in front of them so they could have it to eat, making sure that they had what they needed. And so this went on for 2 weeks. Yesterday, I was in Owensboro, and I drove home, and I turned in on Hunting Lane, and as soon as I pulled in, I looked up, and there's a cow standing in the road. Doesn't happen all the time. It's rare, but it does happen. It's not because I was negligent. It's not because I didn't take care of them for the last 2 weeks. I've been with them more in the last 2 weeks than I've ever been, but she was out. She was not where she was supposed to be. So what do you think I did? I stopped everything. The plans that I had moving forward, what I was planning on doing for the next hour, that ended right then. Stopped the car in the road, put the hazard lights on, called Dad, and I said, I need you to come this way. I'm going this way. I want to make sure we keep her where we've got her, and I'm just going to walk her up here to the barn and put her back in. Why? Because she's out. She's lost. She was bawling. The whole herd was bawling. Everybody was looking, going, I mean, she was just right there. It's not like she was on another planet, but she was right there on the outside of the fence, and she knew that she was not. And she was looking at a gate, and the gate wasn't open, and she was looking at this fence, and the fence was still there. She forgot where she got out at. And she needed care. It wasn't anything that I did wrong. She just wandered out. It's not carelessness. It's not always negligence. It happens under watchful care. Sheep wander. Cows typically don't, but calves do. They like to wander. When they get a little bigger, when calves are first born, they're pretty close to mama. Mama hide them. She'll call them. They got certain moos that they use. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but every calf knows its mom's moo. Right? I can go out there and look, and a cow can look in a thicket that I can't see anything and just go, Calf gets up, comes right to her, right? Whatever the tone is. Another cow may sound just like her, but it's not mama. She knows her mama. And so they come right out. But when they get a little bigger, right? When they get about 250 pounds, 300 pounds, they're teenagers, right? And then they think they rule in the world, right? They can go out and get on the town. They can go down somewhere else. Maybe there's some better pasture somewhere. These old big cows, they don't like to, they follow the same old path every time and go the same way. I'm going to be a little rebellious. I'm going to go off over the hillside. I'm going to go through this briar thicket. Sometimes I've found them in places like, what are you doing, man? Why are you here? Or they put their head through together like there's feed on the other side of that gate. These silly cows don't know how to stick their head through the gate to get to the feed, and they'll turn their head sideways, and they'll put it in, and they'll turn their head back, and then they're standing there. It's like, how do I get out of this? And I'll come by and say, here like this, and push their head back through. They do silly things. They do silly things. It's called teenagers, right? It's always the same thing. Adults set parameters. And what do kids do? Test the boundaries. It doesn't matter if it's animals or kids, right? Same thing. They will always test the boundaries. Why is that? Why do they do that? Because they wonder, are they keeping something from me? Is there something really better on the other side of that hill? We never go down there. In the wintertime, we always stay up here on top of this hill, close to this bale of hay. What if there's good green grass down there at the bottom of that hill? I think I'm going to go see. These guys never go down there, but I'm going to go down there. I'm going to wander off and see what's down there. It's always the idea of maybe there's something better that's being kept from me. Kind of how Satan seduced Eve in the Garden of Eden. Is it, right? Did God really say you're not supposed to eat the fruit of this tree? Yep, that's what he said. He said, I'm not supposed to go there. I'm not supposed to do that, or I'll die. Yeah, you won't die. He's keeping something from you. You'll be like him. Yeah. There's something better. There's something better being hidden from you. See it? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the temptation. It's the temptation. And that's why we wonder sometimes, and that's why we go off, and that's why we drift. Sometimes we follow the wrong voice. Sometimes we don't even realize we're lost. Sometimes we don't even realize we're lost. We just kind of go. Charlie Patton said something to me one time. I never really thought about it, but now I understand it a whole lot more. He was like, if you see these cows here, he said, don't ever go take your four-wheeler down there. He said, because if they hear the four-wheeler, they'll think they're out, and they're not. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, if they hear the four-wheeler coming, he said, the four-wheeler only comes when they're out. And he said, so if they're where I want them to be, and they hear the four-wheeler coming, they'll think they're out, and they'll leave and go somewhere else. I'm like, that's wild. Right? And so sometimes we're lost and we don't even know we're lost. We're just wherever we are. We follow the wrong voice. Jesus wants us to understand something very important. The sheep is lost before it knows it's lost. Okay? The sheep is lost before it knows it's lost, but the shepherd knows immediately. You catch that? The sheep can be lost and not realize it's lost. It can be in danger and not even know that it's in danger. But the shepherd knows immediately. It knows immediately that it's lost. He knows immediately that it's lost and there's something that has to be done. And that's why you have to stop what's going on and deal with it. That's grace. That's grace. The shepherd goes after the one. The shepherd goes after the one. Does he not leave the 99 and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? This is the part that offends the religious logic, okay? This is the part that offends the Pharisees. This is the part that they stand and look and go, I don't get what you're doing. I don't get what you're doing. Why risk them? Right? I mean, the sheep. We'll go back to some sheep analogy here because cows pretty easy to handle. If I've got a cow out, I don't mind going after that cow because the cows that are back where they're supposed to be, pretty much going to be what they're doing. I mean, they're all out there doing their thing right now, and I'm here. And most likely when I go back home, they'll still be doing their thing. But I always tell people, sheep are born looking for a place to die, right? And so bad things happen to good sheep all the time. My co-teacher now has a cell camera inside of their lambing barn. And so I see her all the time. It's like the bell rings and she's like, and she can talk to them on her phone now. It's like, hey, what are you doing in that corner? You know, and it's like, what the heck? It's amazing. It's like, this is crazy. And so she's looking at them because sheep they'll make a mistake and they'll just do something stupid. And so she's got this camera in the barn and she can watch them because they'll just do crazy things. And so when you leave your flock of sheep, when you leave all of these guys that are in the barn doing their thing and go after one, you're putting them there's a little liability there. They may do something stupid, right? They may do something stupid. They may lay down on the wrong side of the hill. Right? Cows can do that too. You ever know that? If a cow lays down on the wrong side of the hill with their feet up the hill, they can't get up, and they'll just roll. And if they roll into a ditch, they're gone. And sheep will do that too. They'll just lay down. If they lay down the wrong way, you just walk up to them, and they're like, help. And you got to flip them over, and then they can get up. They're looking for a place to die sometimes. Why invest so much effort in one? Why not just cut your losses? Here's the thing about kingdom love. Kingdom love doesn't always operate on efficiency. Okay? It operates on relationship. Okay? It operates on relationship. I've never gotten rid of a bottle calf. All right? I've kept them all, every one that I've ever had. It's not efficient. A little more now maybe with cattle prices where they are. But it's not really efficient. You spend about as much keeping one alive as you get for it when you sell it because it's a lot more expensive to keep a bottle calf, right? And so if you're around a guy who has a lot of cows and a productive ranch, they don't have time to invest in that calf. That's how I get some of them sometimes, right? They'll just call and say, can you come get this calf? I don't have time to deal with it. No, this is not efficient use of my time. I do not have time to doctor this calf and keep it going because I've got 1,000 out here that I've got to deal with. Right, so it's not about efficiency. Going after the one is not about efficiency and profit. it's about relationship. I've saved a lot of sick calves. I called Josh Luttrell to come one time, and one of the first calves we ever had born. His name was Carlisle. Taylor named him Carlisle. And Carlisle's mom, she dried up, and I didn't realize it, and I went out and I found him in the field, and he was laying there and he couldn't get up. And I did the little skin test. See how this pops? If your skin does this, you're not dehydrated. But when I pulled his out and let it go, it stayed up. He was dried out. Okay? And I was like, uh-oh, this guy's sick. So we picked him up. I gave him so much milk with a syringe. Instead of, I hadn't learned how to tube feed at the time, and so I was forcing air down him, and he got bloated. And so Josh comes down, and I've got him out in the sun and surrounded by some straw bales, and he's laying there. You can tell he's as sick as he can be. Josh walks up in the cattleman's way that he does and grabs him by the ear and the tail and picks him up, and he falls over, and he said, "You might as well shoot him. He ain't going to make it." And I said, "Well, I'm going to try something." He said, "Well, let me look at him a minute." And he looked, he said, "You know, he kind of looks bloated." He said, "You got a hose?" I said, "I may have." And so I went and found a little piece of plastic tubing, and he put it down his throat and pressed on him a little bit, and all this gas came out. He said, "We'll see what he does." Next morning was Easter morning, right? I get up on Easter morning, and I've got him moved in the garage, and I come outside, and he's standing up, and he's sucking on the tricycle handlebar that was red. And I was like, I think I got a calf here that's going to take a bottle. And I went and fixed him a bottle, and he knocked it down, and we saved that calf, right? Was it efficient? No. No. It was a relationship. We did everything we could for the one. The shepherd doesn't wait for the sheep to come home. He doesn't yell instructions from a distance. He goes after it. It's not passive love. It's pursuing love. Okay? It's pursuing love. The shepherd then, this is interesting to note and to see, the shepherd bears the weight of the rescue. When he finds it, what does he do? He doesn't go, "Come on, you got to walk home. You got out, now you're going." Nope. He picks the sheep up, puts it on his shoulders. You've seen the pictures, right? He puts the sheep on his shoulders, and this is what's important. The sheep does not walk back. The shepherd carries it. Because this is what happens. When we get lost and then we come to that place, a lot of times we're exhausted and we're injured and we're in a panic. The rescue is not a lecture. The rescue is a lifting. The rescue is a lifting. This is grace. The burden of restoration does not fall on the sheep. It falls on the shepherd. This too is grace. Heaven rejoices over one. When he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." See, it's not a quiet celebration, it's communal joy. The shepherd doesn't say, "Well, that was a long day. You get it back in the barn, I'm going to bed." No, the shepherd says, "We're going to have a party. We're going to celebrate this." And then Jesus drives this point home by saying, "I tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons that do not need to repent." That statement would have landed really hard on those Pharisees. It would have landed really hard on those Pharisees. Jesus is not minimizing faithfulness. He's revealing God's heart. He's revealing his heart. Heaven erupts when one lost person comes home. Why? Because the kingdom values people, not percentages, not numbers. The kingdom values names. The kingdom values stories, individual testimonies, and not statistics. Who struggles with this? This parable is not difficult for everybody. If you've ever been in a place where you felt lost or overlooked, or in a place where you're just kind of away from God, far from God, when you read this story, it's like oxygen. It's like a breath of fresh air. But if you've been faithful, if you're the one that never has left if you're the one that's always been there, if you're the one that's never wandered off, if you're the one that says, yep, I'm going to follow the leadership of the herd, I'm going to follow the leadership of the flock, they know what's best, I'm going to stay with them, I'm not going over that hillside, I don't know what's over there, yeah, I heard the stories that they tell that there might be, but I'm going to stay here. If you're the one that's always walked the straight and narrow, here every time the door is open, seems a little unfair. That's who Jesus is addressing. The Pharisees are standing right there, and they don't celebrate the lost being found. Instead of celebrating the lost being found, they resent the attention that is being paid to them. Catch that. They resent the attention that's being paid to them. And Jesus is looking at them and he's saying, listen, the kingdom is not threatened by grace. Faithfulness is not diminished by mercy. Joy increases when restoration happens. That's what this is about. And what this teaches us about living in the kingdom is that living in the kingdom means aligning our hearts with God's heart. And what does God's heart do? He searches for the lost. He searches for the lost. He carries the broken and rejoices loudly when one returns. Kingdom people don't complain about lost sheep. They celebrate ones that are found. And kingdom people don't guard grace. They give it away. They give it away. So what are our walking points? How do we take this and apply it? First thing, I think you have to make it personal, right? Take this message and make it personal. Remember where you were when God found you. Some of you have a story, right? And you really ought to share the story, okay? Because God gave you a story. And your story can help somebody else. Just know that, right? Your story can help somebody else. Every believer was once the one. Every believer was once the one. Lost doesn't always mean rebellious, okay? It doesn't always mean that you wandered off. But it could be that you were distracted. It could be that you were wounded. Or it could be that you were drifting. Listen, don't ever forget the shoulders that carried you home. Don't ever forget the shoulders that carried you home. And tell the story and celebrate them. Rejoice when God works in somebody else's life. When you see what God's doing in somebody else's life, celebrate that. Sometimes people have pasts that are messy. Okay. Somebody may not look like you. Somebody else's transformation may have not followed your timeline. Okay? God does all things differently with everybody. And sometimes when you see somebody and it's like, man, they have a really messed up past, right? And maybe you don't have a really messed up past. Doesn't mean you don't care about them. Doesn't mean you don't love them. Doesn't mean you don't want to see them come to Christ. But this is what I want to share with you. It may take somebody that's got a little bit of a messed up past that found him. It may take somebody with a little messed up past that got carried home on somebody else's shoulders that you got to introduce them to before they get it. So look for that. Seek that out. Maybe you're the catalyst that puts them in front of the message that's shared to meet that person, to hear that story. When heaven rejoices, we should too. Don't be afraid to ask God who your one is. Remember what I said last week and the week before. You're not called to rescue everyone. All right, that's not your calling. God doesn't do it that way. He doesn't put the weight of the world on your shoulders. That's not what he does. He doesn't say that all the lost people in the whole country or the whole continent of Africa that needs to be saved. It's your responsibility. That's not how he does it. He calls missionaries and he calls them to countries and then he calls them to villages and then he calls them to houses and then he says, that one. That's your one. You reach that one. And sometimes through that one, he reaches thousands. But you got to be faithful to the one so that he can do his work. It's not everybody. It's just the one that he called you to. You are called. All of us are called to care deeply about someone. Who is that one for you? Who is that neighbor? Who is that coworker, student, family member? Who is that God may be asking you to move toward with compassion? That's your challenge for this week. In the kingdom, love is not measured by how many are safe. Okay? It's not measured by how many are safe, but it's by how far we are willing to go for one who is lost. Jesus is not just the storyteller in this parable. He is the shepherd. He is the good shepherd. And every step as we go through this process, every step that he takes toward the cross, is it. Let me pray for us.